They called him the Silent Blade. Chang Wu didn't negotiate, he eliminated. His empire was built on fear, and his word was final. Rule number 1, never show weakness. But on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. The bell above Scott's diner chimed, but this time it didn't announce hungry truckers looking for pie and coffee. It announced death itself. 3 black SUVs rolled up to the curb like shadows swallowing light. The diner's usual chatter died instantly. Forks froze mid-air, coffee cups stopped halfway to lips, because everyone in this neighborhood knew what those vehicles meant. Chang Wu stepped through the door, his charcoal suit sharper than any blade he'd ever carried. The intricate black tattoo crawling up his neck seemed to pulse with menace. Behind him, 2 stone-faced bodyguards in matching dark suits and sunglasses scanned the room like predators assessing prey. Nicole Scott's tray slipped from her trembling hands. The crash of shattering plates exploded through the silence like a gunshot. Her heart hammered against her ribs as one thought screamed through her mind. Mama Lu. Her grandmother sat alone in the corner booth, her wooden cane resting against the red leather seat, her floral dress and beige cardigan making her look impossibly fragile in this moment of terror. Nicole's legs moved before her brain caught up, stumbling toward her grandmother, arms outstretched as if she could somehow shield the woman who raised her from what was coming. Chang Wu's footsteps echoed across the black and white checkered floor. Steady, deliberate, final. Nicole positioned herself between the Mafia boss and her grandmother, her voice cracking as she screamed, "Don't touch her, please. Whatever you want, I'll—" But Chang Wu walked past her like she was invisible. His eyes were locked on Mama Lu, and for the first time in 15 years, something flickered behind that ice-cold gaze, something that looked almost human. Then the impossible happened. The most feared man in the city, the man who'd allegedly skinned his enemies alive, the man whose very name made hardened criminals weep, stopped in front of the elderly woman and did something no one had ever seen him do. He bowed. Not a polite nod, not a casual gesture, a full, 90-degree, submissive bow. His designer suit bent with him, his tattooed neck exposed and vulnerable, his hands perfectly still at his sides. The bodyguards remained frozen. The patrons under tables held their breath. Nicole's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. And Mama Lu? She looked up at this dangerous stranger with her steady, kind eyes, and something in them changed. Recognition, memory, understanding. "You," she whispered, her weathered hand tightening around her cane. "You're that boy." Chang Wu's voice, when he finally spoke, was so quiet it barely carried across the booth, but everyone heard it because the entire diner had become a tomb. "You fed me when I was a ghost, Halmoni. You saved me when the world had left me to die. But what did this humble grandmother do to earn the loyalty of the city's most ruthless killer? Why would a man who shows no mercy bow before her like a devoted son? And what happens when his enemies discover that the Silent Blade finally has someone he would die to protect?" Before we dive deeper into this story, take a moment to subscribe and like this video and let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen next. It truly means so much to see this community grow. Every like, comment, and share you give helps us bring more incredible stories to life together. Now, let's find out what secrets Mama Lu is hiding, and how a bowl of soup 15 years ago set off a chain of events that will turn this quiet diner into a battlefield. The silence stretched like pulled taffy, thick and suffocating. Mama Lu's eyes, those warm, knowing eyes that had seen decades of joy and pain, studied the bowed figure before her. Her trembling fingers reached out, hovering just above Chang Wu's head before gently touching his hair, the way a mother touches a child she thought she'd lost. "Chang," she breathed, and the name fell from her lips like a prayer. "Little Chang. You were so thin, so scared." His shoulders shook, just once, before he straightened. When he lifted his head, Nicole saw something that made her blood run cold, not because it was frightening, but because it was impossible. There were tears in the eyes of the silent blade. I was dying that winter, Chang-Woo said, his voice raw and unguarded in a way that made his bodyguards shift uncomfortably. 15 years old. Starving. Running from people who wanted me dead. I collapsed behind your soup kitchen in the snow. And you, his voice cracked, you brought me inside. You fed me. You didn't ask questions. You didn't demand anything. You just gave. Mama Lou's weathered hand cupped his face, and impossibly, the most dangerous man in the city leaned into her touch like a lost child finally coming home. I remember, she said softly. You ate 4 bowls of soup, wouldn't look me in the eye, had a nasty cut on your neck. Chang-Woo's hand instinctively went to his tattoo, to the ink that covered old scars and older pain. You told me that no matter how dark the night got, morning always comes. You said I was worth saving. You were. You are. Nicole stood frozen, her mind struggling to reconcile the scene before her. This was the man the news called a monster, the man whose name made police officers look over their shoulders. And he was crying in her grandmother's hands like a broken boy. Chang-Woo straightened fully, composing himself with visible effort. He reached into his jacket. Nicole tensed, but he only pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the table with reverence, as if he were making an offering at an altar. For the meal, he said, and the meals after, and the debt I can never truly repay. Then he turned and walked out, his bodyguards falling in behind him like shadows. The SUVs pulled away, leaving only the sound of Nicole's ragged breathing and the faint trembling of coffee cups still rattling in their saucers. Nicole rushed to the table, grabbed the envelope, and ripped it open. Her hands went numb. Inside were stacks of $100 bills, crisp and new, smelling of ink and impossibility. She counted once, twice, 3 times, hoping she was wrong. $50,000. Oh, God, she whispered. Mama, we can't keep this. Do you know what he is? What he does? Mama Lou's fingers traced the edge of the envelope, but her eyes were distant, lost in memory. I know what he was. A scared child who needed help. That was 15 years ago. He's a criminal now. A killer. The news says a lot of things, Mama Lou interrupted gently. But I saw his eyes today, Nicole. Same eyes as that boy. Still scared, still looking for somewhere to belong. Nicole wanted to scream, wanted to shake sense into her grandmother. But she knew that look, that stubborn set to Mama Lou's jaw. The same look she'd had when she'd mortgaged the house to keep the diner open during the recession. The same look she'd had when she'd taken in Nicole after her parents died. Mama Lou didn't abandon people. It wasn't in her nature. I'm returning this, Nicole said, shoving the money back into the envelope. First thing tomorrow. We don't need blood money, but tomorrow came with complications. Nicole woke at 5:30, as always, to prep the diner for the breakfast rush. But when she rounded the corner of their building, she stopped so fast she nearly tripped over her own feet. 2 men in dark suits stood on either side of the diner's entrance. Sunglasses, earpieces, arms crossed. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there like very expensive, very threatening statues. What the hell? Nicole muttered. She approached slowly, keys clutched in her white-knuckled fist. Excuse me, this is private property. You need to… Security detail, one of them said without looking at her. Mr. Park's orders. No one threatens this establishment. Mr. Park? Who is… Then it clicked. Chang-Woo? He sent you? We're here for your protection, ma'am. I didn't ask for protection. The man's expression didn't change. Nevertheless, Nicole wanted to argue, but the morning crowd was already approaching, and she had hash browns to flip and coffee to brew. She unlocked the door with shaking hands and stormed inside, the bodyguards taking their positions like they'd been there forever. By 7 a.m., it was clear this was a disaster. Old Mr. Peterson, who'd been coming in for 30 years for his eggs and bacon, took one look at the guards and turned around. The truck drivers who usually filled the counter stools drove right past. Even the teenagers who hung out in the back booth after school crossed to the other side of the street. By noon, Nicole had served exactly 3 customers. By closing time, she'd lost count of how many people had walked up, seen the guards, and walked away. 3 days of this and they'd be bankrupt. She found the address in the phone book because, of course, a Mafia headquarters was just listed there like a dentist's office. The building was downtown, an old warehouse that had been converted into something sleek and modern and vaguely menacing, the kind of place where fortunes were made and people disappeared. Nicole stormed past the confused receptionist, past more men in suits, straight to the double doors at the end of the hall. She kicked them open with more courage than sense. Chang-Woo looked up from behind a massive desk, surprise flickering across his face before settling back into that careful mask of control. Around him, 5 other men in expensive suits reached for weapons that Nicole really hoped they weren't about to use. "You're killing my business," she snapped before anyone could throw her out. "Your protection is scaring away every customer we have. We'll be closed in a week if this continues." Chang-Woo raised one hand, and the room settled. He studied her for a long moment, and Nicole fought the urge to step back. This wasn't the broken boy from Mama Lou's story. This was the man who'd built an empire on fear. "Sit," he said finally. "I'll stand." His jaw tightened. "Sit, please." The please did it. Nicole sat. Chang-Woo dismissed the others with a gesture. When they were alone, he leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. "I owe your grandmother everything. Putting guards on the diner is the least I can do." "The least you can do is leave us alone," Nicole shot back. "We were fine before you showed up. We don't need your guilt or your money or your men with guns. You need more than you realize." Chang-Woo said quietly, "My enemies will notice that I care about that diner. They'll use it. Use you. Use Mama Lou. I can't let that happen." "Then don't care about it," Nicole said. "Walk away. Forget you ever came back." Something painful crossed his face. "I tried that for 15 years. It didn't work." They stared at each other across the desk, 2 people separated by everything except one elderly woman who'd shown kindness when the world showed none. "What if," Chang-Woo said slowly, "we compromise? I remove the visible guards, but I install a security system. Cameras, silent alarms. If anything happens, my people can be there in 3 minutes. And that's it? No men lurking outside? No black SUVs? No visible presence?" He agreed. "But I reserve the right to visit, for coffee." Nicole wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to stay away forever. But she saw the same thing Mama Lou had seen, desperation wrapped in expensive suits and tattoos. A boy still looking for somewhere he belonged. "Fine," she said, "but you come alone. No entourage. No drama. You're just another customer. Deal." The security system was installed overnight by men who moved like ghosts. Nicole wouldn't have even known they were there, except for the small cameras now discreetly mounted in the corners and the new keypad by the back door. Chang-Woo showed up the next Tuesday at 2 p.m., during the dead zone between lunch and dinner. He wore a simple black button-down and jeans, looking almost normal except for the tattoo crawling up his neck, and the way he moved like violence was always just beneath the surface, coiled and ready. Nicole poured him coffee without being asked. The cup rattled slightly when she set it down. "Black, right?" she said. He nodded, wrapping his hands around the cup like he was trying to memorize the warmth. "Your grandmother still makes the soup? The one with the thick noodles and the beef?" "Every Wednesday." "I'll come Wednesday then." They sat in awkward silence, Nicole wiping down an already clean counter, Chang-Woo staring into his coffee like it held answers to questions he hadn't asked. "Why did you come back?" Nicole asked finally. "After all these years. Why now?" Chang-Woo was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I heard Mama Lou was sick last year. Heart trouble. I sent flowers to the hospital anonymously. But when I heard she recovered, I realized I'd spent 15 years being a coward. I built an empire, but couldn't face the one person who'd actually believed I was worth something. So I came back. To say thank you. To make sure she was protected. He trailed off. To come home. Nicole finished softly. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. And she saw past the tattoos and the reputation to the truth underneath. He was just as scared as she was. Just as lost. Yeah, he whispered. To come home. Wednesday came, and with it, Mama Lou's soup. Chang Wu arrived at 1:30, early enough that the diner was empty except for one regular old Harry, who sat in his usual spot nursing a coffee and working on his crossword puzzle. Nicole served Chang Wu a steaming bowl, and for the first time since he'd walked back into their lives, she saw him smile. Really smile. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost innocent. This is exactly how I remembered it, he said after the first spoonful. 15 years, and it hasn't changed at all. Why would we change perfection? Mama Lou called from the kitchen, her voice warm with affection. They settled into a strange routine after that. Chang Wu came twice a week, always during the slow hours, always alone. He'd drink coffee, eat whatever Mama Lou cooked, and sometimes, when Nicole was brave enough, they'd talk. About everything except what he did for a living. That remained unspoken, the elephant in the room that they both pretended wasn't there. 3 weeks passed like this. 3 weeks of careful peace. 3 weeks of Nicole almost forgetting who Chang Wu really was. Then the Vipers arrived. It was a Thursday afternoon, the diner moderately full with the after-school crowd. Nicole was refilling waters when the door swung open hard enough to crack against the wall. 3 men walked in, and Nicole's stomach dropped. She knew trouble when she saw it. These men wore it like cologne, cheap leather jackets, visible weapons, attitudes that screamed violence. The leader was tall and rail-thin, with a snake tattooed on his bald head. His eyes swept the diner with cold assessment before landing on Nicole. Well, well, he drawled, sauntering toward the counter. This is the famous Scott's Diner, the place that caught the attention of the Silent Blade himself. Nicole's hand tightened on the water pitcher. We're just a diner. Nothing special. Can I get you gentlemen some coffee? Gentlemen. The man laughed. Hear that, boys? She called us gentlemen. He leaned across the counter, and Nicole smelled cigarettes and something chemical on his breath. Here's what I think, sweetheart. I think Chang Wu's gone soft. I think he's got a thing for playing house with pretty waitresses and their grandmas, and I think that makes him weak. I think you should leave, Nicole said, her voice steadier than she felt. Or what? The man's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was iron and cruel. You gonna call your boyfriend? Tell him the Vipers came too. Let her go. The voice came from the corner booth, where Chang Wu had been sitting so quietly that Nicole had almost forgotten he was there. But she remembered now. Everyone remembered now. He stood slowly, deliberately, setting his coffee cup down with the kind of care that spoke of controlled fury. His eyes had gone flat and dark, and suddenly the temperature in the diner dropped 20 degrees. The Viper leader's smile faltered. Chang Wu. Didn't see you there, brother. We were just... I said. Chang Wu interrupted, walking forward with measured steps. Let her go. The hand on Nicole's wrist tightened for a moment, a flex of stupid pride before releasing. She stumbled back, rubbing the red marks already forming on her skin. Chang Wu was still walking. The 3 Vipers shifted nervously, hands drifting toward weapons they suddenly weren't sure they wanted to draw. This is Viper territory now, the leader tried, but his voice had lost its swagger. We're just marking what's ours. You're mistaken, Chang Wu said, and now he was close enough that the Viper had to look up to meet his eyes. This diner is under my protection. Everyone in it is under my protection. Touch them again, and I'll show you why they call me the Silent Blade. You can't. It happened so fast, Nicole almost missed it. One moment the Viper was talking. The next, Chungwoo had grabbed his hand, the same hand that had grabbed Nicole, and twisted. The crack echoed through the diner like a gunshot. The man's scream was raw and animal. He dropped to his knees, cradling his shattered hand. His friends reached for their weapons, but Changwoo hadn't moved, hadn't even looked at them. He simply raised his other hand, and something in that gesture stopped them cold. "Tell Kang Dae," Changwoo said, his voice soft and terrible, "that if he sends anyone near this diner again, I won't just break their hands. I'll make them wish they'd never been born. Tell him the silent blade still has teeth. Tell him this place is sacred ground, and anyone who violates it will learn exactly why I built an empire on fear." He released the man, who scrambled backward, still screaming. His friends grabbed him and dragged him toward the door, leaving a trail of blood on the black and white tiles. Changwoo picked up his coffee cup. It hadn't spilled. Not a single drop. "Sorry about the mess," he said to Nicole, his voice back to normal, as if he hadn't just broken a man's hand without raising his pulse. "I'll have someone come clean the floor." Then, he finished his coffee in one long swallow, placed exact change on the counter, and walked out. Nicole stood frozen, her hands shaking, her mind racing. The teenagers in the back booth were recording everything on their phones. Old Harry hadn't even looked up from his crossword, his pen still moving steadily across the page as if violence was just another part of the daily routine. And Nicole realized, with a cold certainty that settled in her bones like ice, that everything had just changed. The Vipers knew about the diner now. Changwoo had made his declaration. The protection he'd promised wasn't invisible anymore. The war had begun, and Scott's diner was ground zero. The fire came 3 nights later. Nicole was closing up, counting the register while Mama Lou swept the floor and hummed an old gospel hymn. The security cameras Changwoo had installed blinked their steady red rhythm in the corners. Everything felt normal, safe. Then Mama Lou gasped. Nicole looked up to see orange light dancing across her grandmother's face. Through the windows, flames were crawling up the fence of Mama Lou's small garden behind the diner, the garden where she grew tomatoes and herbs, where she'd planted roses in memory of Nicole's mother. "No!" Mama Lou dropped her broom and rushed toward the back door. Nicole caught her, held her back as the fire spread faster, hungrily consuming the wooden fence posts, the raised beds, 15 years of carefully tended life. The heat pressed against the windows like a living thing. Someone had doused everything in accelerant. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. Nicole fumbled for her phone, dialed 911, then without thinking dialed the number Changwoo had made her save, just in case. He answered on the first ring. "Nicole? They burned Mama's garden," she said, her voice breaking. "The Vipers. I'm coming. Lock the doors. Don't go outside." The fire department arrived within minutes, but the garden was already gone. Nothing left but ash and the acrid smell of gasoline and spite. Mama Lou stood at the window, silent tears tracking down her weathered cheeks, and Nicole wanted to break something, wanted to scream, wanted to make someone pay. Changwoo arrived as the firefighters were packing up. He walked through the smoldering remains, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. When he came back inside, his eyes were darker than Nicole had ever seen them. "Pack your bags," he said without preamble. "Both of you. I have a safe house upstate. Armed guards. Secure perimeter. You'll be protected until I can—" "No," Mama Lou said. Changwoo blinked. "Mama Lou, they're escalating. Next time it won't be a garden. Next time they'll—" I said no. Mama Lou's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "I didn't run when the bank threatened to take this place. I didn't run when the neighborhood went bad. I didn't run when my daughter died and left me with a grandbaby to raise. I'm not running now. This is different," Changwoo insisted, and Nicole heard the fear underneath his words. "These are killers. They don't care about collateral damage. They'll hurt you to get to me." "Then maybe you should be the one to leave," Mama Lou said gently. Maybe you should walk away. Let things settle down. I tried that for 15 years, Chang-woo said, his voice raw. I'm not losing you again. Either of you. Nicole looked between them, the Mafia boss and the grandmother, two impossibly stubborn people locked in a battle of wills. We could compromise, she heard herself say. Stay here, but let Chang-woo increase security. More cameras, panic buttons, whatever it takes. They'll see it as a fortress, Chang-woo said. It'll just make you more of a target. Then we make it a fortress, Mama Lu said firmly. But we don't run. This is our home. Some things are worth fighting for. Chang-woo closed his eyes, and Nicole saw him wrestling with something bigger than strategy or pride. He was terrified. The most dangerous man in the city was terrified of losing the only family he'd ever had. Okay, he finally said. But we do this my way. Full security. You don't go anywhere alone. And the first sign that things are going wrong, you leave. No arguments. No arguments, Mama Lu agreed. But Nicole saw the lie in her grandmother's eyes. Mama Lu would die before she abandoned her diner. The next week passed in tense anticipation. Chang-woo's people reinforced the doors, installed bulletproof film on the windows, and placed weapons in strategic locations, just in case. Nicole learned where the panic buttons were, memorized the emergency numbers, and tried to pretend that life was normal while living in what felt increasingly like a bunker. Business picked up slightly. Word had spread about the Viper's warning, and perversely, it drew people in. Curiosity seekers, thrill seekers, people who wanted to see the place that had caught the attention of two criminal empires. Chang-woo came every day now, sometimes multiple times, always watching the door, always positioned between the entrance and wherever Mama Lu was sitting. Nicole caught him checking his phone obsessively, saw the messages he didn't share, the calls he took outside that left his expression grimmer each time. How bad is it? She asked one afternoon when the diner was empty except for them. Bad, he admitted. Kang Dae sees this as an opportunity. If he can kill me, he takes over my territory. If he can make me look weak, my own people will turn on me. Either way, he wins. And if you just gave him what he wants, let him have the territory? Chang-woo laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's not about territory anymore. It's about pride, about proving he's stronger than the silent blade. He won't stop until one of us is dead. So what do? We wait, Chang-woo said. And we hope I'm better at this game than he is. Someone's feeding them information, he added after a moment, his voice tight with frustration. They know too much. When I visit, what routes I take, even what security upgrades we've made. There's a leak somewhere. Nicole glanced around the diner. A handful of regulars sat in their usual spots, the construction workers at the counter, Mrs. Chen with her eternal cup of tea, old Harry doing his crossword in the corner booth. The same people who'd been coming here for years, their routines as predictable as the sunrise. You think it's someone here? She asked quietly. I think it's someone close enough to watch, Chang-woo said carefully. But I don't know who yet. The storm hit on a Tuesday night in early March. Rain came down in sheets, turning the streets into rivers, the sky into something dark and furious. Nicole was prepping for the dinner rush when the lights flickered once, twice, then died. The dinner rush never materialized. The storm had kept people home. Even old Harry, their most reliable regular, had called earlier to say he wasn't venturing out in this weather. The diner was empty except for Nicole and Mama Lu, which turned out to be both a blessing and a terrible vulnerability. The backup generator should have kicked in immediately. It didn't. Nicole? Mama Lu's voice came from the kitchen, tight with worry. Stay there, Nicole called, grabbing the flashlight Chang-woo had insisted she keep behind the counter. Her phone rang. Chang-woo, the power's out, she said before he could speak. I know. It's not an accident. Someone cut the main line and disabled your generator. I'm 5 minutes away. But Nicole, they're coming. The Vipers. Tonight. Nicole's blood turned to ice. How do you know? I have someone on the inside. He just sent word. A full hit squad. Maybe 10 men. They're planning to burn the place down with you inside, then pin it on a gas leak. You need to get Mama Lou and run. Now. The doors, Nicole said, her mind racing even as panic threatened to swallow her whole. Chang-Woo, they're reinforced. Remember? We can barricade ourselves in. Wait for you to arrive with backup. Nicole, we're not running, she said, and meant it. Tell me what to do. A pause. Then, the gun behind the register. Get it. There's another under the counter by the kitchen. Bullets are in the drawer marked receipts. Lock the front door. Barricade it with tables. Move Mama Lou to the center booth that has the most cover. And Nicole? Yeah? I'm 3 minutes away. You just need to hold for 3 minutes. The line went dead. Nicole moved on autopilot, muscle memory and adrenaline taking over where rational thought failed. She locked the front door, dragged 2 heavy tables across it. The gun was exactly where Chang-Woo said it would be, a Glock 19, heavy and cold in her shaking hands. Mama, she called, her voice surprisingly steady. We need to move you. Mama Lou emerged from the kitchen, leaning on her cane, her face calm despite everything. They're coming, aren't they? Yes. Then let's get ready. They moved to the center booth, the one with the high backs that would provide the most cover. Nicole grabbed the second gun, checked that it was loaded like Chang-Woo had taught her during one of his just-in-case lessons she'd thought were paranoid. I'm scared, Nicole admitted, crouching beside her grandmother. Mama Lou took her hand, squeezed it with surprising strength. Fear means you're alive, baby. It means you have something worth fighting for. Now steady your hands and remember you're a Scot. We don't break easy. The first SUV arrived like a harbinger of death, its headlights cutting through the rain. Then a second, a third. Men poured out, armed and purposeful, their faces covered with masks that made them look inhuman. Nicole's phone lit up with Chang-Woo's final message. 2 minutes. Stay down. One of the men approached the door, tried the handle, then gestured to the others. They didn't bother with subtlety. Someone swung a sledgehammer, and even reinforced, the door frame cracked. On 3, Nicole whispered, raising the gun the way Chang-Woo had shown her. We shoot at their legs. We just need to slow them down. Mama Lou nodded, her cane gripped in both hands like a weapon. The door burst inward with a crack of splintering wood. A man stepped through, and Nicole pulled the trigger. The recoil surprised her. The bullet went wide, shattering one of the windows. But the man stumbled back, and for a moment, they had space. Then the real assault began. They came through the broken door like a flood, masked figures spreading through the diner with military precision. Nicole fired again, and someone screamed. She couldn't tell if she'd hit them or if it was just luck, but they scattered, taking cover behind overturned tables. Police are coming, Nicole shouted, hoping it was true. You still have time to run. Her answer was a burst of gunfire that tore through the booth above their heads. Mama Lou gasped but didn't scream, just gripped her cane tighter. Then the window to their right exploded inward in a shower of glass, and Nicole knew Chang-Woo's reinforced windows were giving way under sustained fire. Rain and wind poured in, bringing the storm inside with them. Where is he? Someone shouted. Where's the silent blade? Not here, another voice answered. Just the women. Burn it. Send him a message. Nicole saw one of them pull out a bottle with a rag stuffed in the top. A Molotov cocktail. They were really going to burn them alive. She aimed, fired, and this time her shot found its mark. The man holding the bottle dropped it with a curse, and flames spread across the wet floor, creating a barrier between them and the Vipers. Nice shot, Mama Lou whispered. I was aiming for his chest, Nicole admitted. Then the front door, what was left of it, exploded inward again, and Chang-Woo came through like an avenging angel. He wasn't alone. 6 of his men poured in behind him, armed and ready, and suddenly the odds shifted. Chang Wu moved through the chaos with lethal precision, each movement economic and brutal. He wasn't trying to wound. He was trying to end this. A Viper enforcer turned his shotgun toward Nicole's booth, and Chang Wu tackled him from the side, sending them both crashing into the counter. The sound of breaking bone echoed above the gunfire. "Get them out!" Chang Wu shouted to his men. But Nicole saw what he didn't. 3 more Vipers were coming through the shattered windows, flanking around toward the kitchen exit. "Behind you!" she screamed. Chang Wu spun, but he was out of position, still tangled with the man he'd just taken down. The lead Viper raised his weapon, and Nicole saw Chang Wu's death written in the inevitability of that moment. Then Mama Lu moved. She swung her cane low and fast, catching the Viper's ankle with a crack that sent him sprawling. His shot went wild, punching a hole in the ceiling. Chang Wu was on him instantly, and the fight became something primal and terrible. Nicole fired at the other 2 Vipers, driving them back, buying seconds that felt like hours. Beside her, Mama Lu had become something fierce and ancient, her cane a weapon in hands that had once fed a starving boy and now fought to save him. The tide turned. The Vipers realized they were outmatched, outgunned, and running out of time. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called when the shooting started. The remaining attackers retreated, dragging their wounded, leaving blood and shell casings and the ruins of what had been a cheerful diner. Chang Wu stood in the center of the destruction, breathing hard, his suit torn and bloodied. His eyes swept the room, counting bodies, assessing damage, until they landed on Nicole and Mama Lu. "Are you hurt?" he asked, and his voice was gentle despite the violence still crackling in the air. "We're okay," Nicole started to say, but then she saw it, the dark stains spreading across Chang Wu's chest, the way he was holding his side like his ribs were trying to escape. Chang Wu. He looked down at the wound, almost surprised. "It's fine. Just His legs gave out. He caught himself on the counter, but his grip was weak, his face suddenly pale under the tattoos and the storm rain. "Somebody help him!" Nicole screamed, but his men were still clearing the building, still making sure no Vipers remained. She dropped her gun and ran to him, catching him as he slid down the counter, leaving a red smear on the chrome. "I got you," she said, easing him to the floor. Her hands pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was so much blood, too much blood. "Stay with me. The ambulance is coming." Chang Wu's hand found hers, weak but deliberate. "Mama Lu, she's fine. You saved her. You saved us." Tears were streaming down Nicole's face now, mixing with rain and fear. "You don't get to die. You understand me? You don't get to come back into our lives and then leave us like this. Not planning on it," he managed, but his eyes were struggling to focus. Mama Lu was there too, kneeling despite her age, her cane forgotten. She cradled Chang Wu's head in her lap, stroking his hair the way she must have done 15 years ago when he was just a scared boy who'd stumbled into her soup kitchen. "You listen to me, Chang," she said firmly. "You're stronger than this. You survived the streets. You survived building an empire. You're going to survive this too, because you're my boy. My boy. And I don't lose my children." The sirens were closer now. So close. Red and blue lights painted the destroyed diner in colors of emergency and hope. Chang Wu's eyes drifted closed. "No!" Nicole pressed harder on the wound, felt his blood warm between her fingers. "Stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me about the first time you had Mama's soup." His eyes opened, just slightly, tasted, like heaven, like someone cared whether I lived or died. His hand squeezed hers weakly. "Thank you. For caring. For letting me come home. This is your home," Nicole said fiercely. "And you're not leaving it. You're not leaving us." The paramedics burst in, professional and efficient, and Nicole was pushed aside as they worked on Chang Wu with practiced urgency. They loaded him onto a stretcher, started an IV, called out medical jargon that Nicole couldn't process. One of Changwoo's men, a massive guy named Jin who'd been guarding the diner for weeks, put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'll follow the ambulance. Make sure he has the best care. You should stay here. Deal with the police." "Tell them," Nicole's voice cracked. "Tell them he has to make it. Tell them he has family waiting for him." Jin nodded, something soft crossing his hard face. "I'll tell them." The police came with their questions and their clipboards, their cameras that flashed against broken glass and bullet holes. Nicole answered mechanically. Mama Lou beside her, both of them wrapped in shock blankets despite the spring warmth creeping in with the dawn. A detective with kind eyes and gray temples took their statements, his face grave as he surveyed the damage. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "This was a professional hit. If Mr. Park hadn't arrived when he did—" "He saved us," Nicole interrupted. "Whatever else he is, whatever he's done, he saved our lives tonight." The detective nodded slowly. "That'll go in the report. Sometimes the lines aren't as clear as we'd like them to be." They kept the diner closed for investigation, then cleanup, then repairs. Nicole and Mama Lou stayed in a hotel, courtesy of Changwoo's organization, while armed guards rotated outside their door. Jin kept them updated. Changwoo had survived surgery, was stable, was recovering, was asking about them. 2 weeks after the siege, Nicole and Mama Lou were finally allowed to see him. He was in a private room in the city's best hospital, monitors beeping their steady rhythm, his chest wrapped in bandages. Without the tailored suits and the carefully controlled violence, he looked younger, vulnerable, human. His eyes opened when they entered. "Mama Lou." Nicole. Mama Lou pulled a chair close to his bed, took his hand in both of hers. "Don't you ever scare me like that again. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am." A small smile crossed his face, then winced. "Ribs? Good," Mama Lou said without sympathy. "Maybe pain will remind you not to get shot." Nicole stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed. "The Vipers?" "Scattered," Changwoo said. "Kang Day is dead." One of his own lieutenants turned on him during the chaos, apparently trying to kill 2 elderly women crossed a line even for them. The rest have surrendered or fled. "It's over." Nicole felt relief wash over her, but something nagged at her. How did they know so much? When you'd be there? What our security was like? The layout of the diner? Changwoo's expression darkened. "Old Harry." "What?" Nicole's voice came out as a whisper. "No, he's been coming to the diner for years. He's harmless, he just does his crossword and—" "He was in debt," Changwoo interrupted quietly. "Gambling. Owed the wrong people a lot of money. The Vipers approached him months ago, offered to clear his debts if he kept them informed about my visits. Every time I came in, what I ordered, how long I stayed, when the guards changed shifts." He paused. "He didn't know they were planning to kill you. When he found out about the garden, he tried to back out. That's when they threatened his daughter." Mama Lou's hand went to her chest. "His Sarah? They went after his Sarah? She's safe now," Changwoo assured her. "Under protection. And Harry?" He looked away. "He disappeared the night of the siege. Left town. My people found a note in his apartment, an apology addressed to you, Mama Lou. He couldn't face what he'd done." Nicole sank into a chair, the betrayal settling like a weight in her stomach. All those weeks, Harry had been sitting there with his coffee and his crossword, watching, reporting, helping people who wanted to burn them alive. She thought of his quiet presence, his gentle manner, the way he'd always asked about Mama Lou's health. And all of it had been a lie. Or worse, all of it had been real, but he'd been trapped by his own mistakes, forced to betray the people who'd treated him like family. He was a good man who made bad choices, Mama Lou said softly, as if reading Nicole's thoughts. "Fear makes us do terrible things sometimes." "Is it?" Nicole asked quietly, her voice hollow. "Or is there just going to be another Kang Day, another gang, another war?" Another person we trust who turns out to be feeding information to our enemies? Changwu was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that. From this bed, where I almost died defending a diner. He looked at Mama Lu, then Nicole. I've spent 15 years building an empire on fear, but the only time I've ever felt anything real was in that diner. With you. Maybe it's time to stop being the silent blade. What does that mean? Nicole asked. It means I'm done with the violence, done with the territory wars and the power games. I'm keeping enough people around to protect what matters. But the rest? He shook his head carefully. I'm stepping back. Someone else can have the crown. And what will you do? Mama Lu asked, her eyes bright. I was thinking, Changwu said slowly, that Scott's diner might need a partner. Someone to handle security and renovations. Someone to pour coffee and learn how to make soup, if you'll have me. Nicole felt tears burning her eyes. You want to work at the diner? I want to be part of something good, he said simply. I want to be part of a family, if you'll let me. Mama Lu squeezed his hand. We've been your family since you were 15 years old, boy. Took you long enough to realize it. 3 months later, Scott's diner reopened with a celebration that brought the whole neighborhood. The bullet holes were patched, the windows replaced with regular glass, no more fortress, just a diner. The garden had been rebuilt, roses already blooming in memory of the ones lost. A new sign hung above the door. Scott's Diner, Est, 1985. Family owned and operated. Nicole stood behind the counter, watching the crowd fill the booths and stools, listening to the comfortable buzz of conversation and laughter. The horror of that night was fading, becoming a story they'd survived rather than a nightmare they lived in. The door chimed, and Changwu walked in. He moved slower now, a permanent limp from the surgery, a reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. He wasn't wearing a suit. Just jeans and a simple black t-shirt that showed the tattoo creeping up his neck, the art that covered old scars and older pain. He caught Nicole's eye and smiled, and it was real and unguarded and everything she'd never expected from the silent blade. Morning, Chang, she said, reaching for the coffee pot. Morning, Nicole. He slid into his booth. The center one. The one they'd fought from. The one that had become his by blood and choice. Mama Lu emerged from the kitchen with a steaming bowl of soup, her special recipe, the one that had saved a starving boy 15 years ago. Eat up, she said, setting it in front of him. You're too skinny. Always were. Yes, ma'am, Changwu said obediently, and picked up his spoon. Nicole poured his coffee black. No sugar. Exactly how he liked it. The cup was warm in her hands. Steady now, the shaking finally gone. She set it down and met his eyes. Welcome home, she said. And Chang Wu, former gang lord, feared killer, the silent blade himself, smiled at his family and said simply, It's good to be home. Outside, the morning sun burned through the last of the storm clouds. Inside Scott's diner, 3 people who'd found each other across years and violence and impossible odds sat together, bound by soup and sacrifice, and the understanding that sometimes the strongest families are the ones we choose. The door chimed as more customers entered, hungry for breakfast and the story of the diner that had survived. Nicole poured coffee. Mama Lu sang in the kitchen, and Chang Wu sat in his booth, no longer running, no longer hiding, finally at peace. Some debts can never be fully repaid. Some kindnesses echo across decades. And sometimes, in the space between violence and grace, broken people find their way home.